On this special episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, NFL fans, don't look now, but the NFL has an issue. But Texan fans, listeners, and viewers, I'll tell you why CJ Stroud is the exception. Also, Texan fans, keys to victory. Don't sleep on the Minnesota Vikings because this is a hot team. 2-0 team. However, the Houston Texans have all the tools to cool this hot team off.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, to this special episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. What's up, man? Y'all come on in. Shout out to our first-time listeners and viewers. No Cody today. Just me, Johnson Sports Guy Hickman, holding it down. If this is your first time, please welcome. Enjoy the show. Subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Tell a friend to subscribe. And shout out to all my players from the Himalayas. My everydayers coming back to listen to the Locked On Texans podcast. Again, no Cody today. Just me, John, some sports guy Hickman. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So you're getting a $45 come up. That's gas. If you're single, that's a nice low lunch because they're asking for $200 dates right now. So that $45 can go a long way, my brother or my sister. Just go to the Prize Picks /LockedOnNFL. Use promo code LockedOnNFL to get a $45 come up, win $50 instantly when you play 5. We're going to talk the Minnesota Vikings. Hot team right now. Hot team right now with a couple of familiar faces up there. John Grenard once led this team in sacks in a season a couple of times. Blake Cashman, who I think has really blossomed as a NFL linebacker, as a player. Shout out to D'Amico Ryans. I mean, by the time D'Amico retires, we should be looking at him how we look at the Shanahan tree. This coach, this coach, this coach. Now Clint Kubiak in New Orleans and Wes Phillips, we'll talk about. He's a part of that Shanahan tree because he was under McVay. We'll be looking at D'Amico Ryans like linebacker. Blake Cashman's been balling for the Minnesota Vikings. They've been a hot team. But I can't wait to talk to you guys about how Houston, on both sides of the ball, can cool that team off. To come out with a dub and start 3-0. And then we'll talk about the exception. CJ Stroud, special talent, special quarterback. Why the league is in trouble, but Houston ain't got nothing to worry about. Before we dive into that, I want to give you guys some Texans updates. Brevin Jordan has been placed on injury reserve IR. And because of this, the Houston Texans have signed former second-round pick tight end Irv Smith to the 53-man roster, along with D'Angelo Ross. Jeff Okuda's still out, nursing injuries, so they're bringing him up. Ross was a guy I thought played some football, some damn good football for the Houston Texans in the offseason, during training camp, in preseason. And so I never thought he was competing to be a number 2 cornerback on his team. Obviously, that's Kamar Lassiter, who to this point in his young career has allowed a 0.0 passer rating passes his way. So he's been everything the Houston Texans needed and more. But a good rotational guy. So it's good to see D'Angelo Ross getting called up. The Houston Texans also signed Scott Quisenberry. A lot of y'all may not want to hear that name. They signed him to the practice squad. Center Juice Scruggs missed last week with a groin injury. He's on track to return back for Sunday's matchup. That's some much-needed news to hear. As you guys know, the Houston Texans struggled to open up consistent running lanes against the Chicago Bears, who, by the way, they have a tough defensive front. Their front seven is they don't podcast in their front seven. They go to work, they handle business, they go home. It's a tough front, but Houston needed Juice Scruggs, so it's good to see that they could get him back for Sunday's matchup against the Minnesota Vikings because very ferocious front seven, led by Brian Flores, the Tua hater, who was a damn good DC. And so that's some good news. Also, D'Amico Ryan said that Joe Mixon is still day-to-day as of Wednesday, but let's dive into why you guys are here. CJ Stroud, the golden child of the NFL. I'm going to just go ahead and say it. Okay, here's a trend right now. Since 2019, passing touchdowns through 2 weeks, 2019, 105, 2020, 110, 21, 110, 2022, back to 105. Last year, 2023, 86. And now, 2024, it sits around, it sits around 68, right under 70. Now, is that a problem? Well, for a passing league, it is. But I want to talk about how the NFL and these general managers and these organizations have a trend of committing malpractice with these young quarterbacks, because a lot of these franchises believe that no matter what quarterback I have a system, and that system is bulletproof. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to say you guys better thank the football heavens and gods above that Nick Caserio, who we gave a lot of flack to, a lot of crap to, went through those 2 years, went through the process from, honestly, day one, and especially when it was time to bring up and draft CJ Stroud. He never reached for a quarterback. Davis Mills was the third rounder. They needed a quarterback that year. The following year, there was no quarterback to reach for in that draft in 2022. That year, they went with Sting and Kenyon Green, and to this point, for this year, interception for Derek Singler. We all believe he's going to be an all-pro cornerback. Kenyon Green, he's back on track. He's looked like a good football player for the Houston Texans on the inside, especially when he gets his running mate Juice back. But he never reached. He never reached like some of these other franchises have been doing. And because of so, in 2023, he got the perfect quarterback for this franchise. And I honestly feel like the golden child. We know about his records last year. We know that he broke records as a rookie. We know that he's the youngest quarterback to start and win a playoff game. We know that. But what we overlook at times is just how much of a true quarterback CJ Stroud is. And it's not because of the system in place. And so we're seeing the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix, who, by the way, was a complete overdraft of a player at quarterback. We're seeing the Denver Broncos struggle from a quarterback perspective. We've seen it with the Chicago Bears. We've seen it with the New York Jets when they brought over Nathaniel Hackett and before Hackett, and when they overdrafted Zach Wilson. We've seen it with quarterbacks time and time again. Bryce Young, who was just benched last year, committed malpractice as an organization, right? We've seen these franchises have this idea that they're going to bring in a coach who has had success under other coaches who have already put together their game plan and their system and try to plug and play a lot of these guys at quarterback, and either two results are going to happen. We've seen it in Philly. We're still seeing it in Philly. A large part of what we're seeing in Indy is the same thing. Now, granted, I'm giving Anthony Richardson time. He didn't get time last year. We're 2 games into it this year. But when I'm looking at Jalen Hurts, when I'm looking at a Zach Wilson, when I'm looking at a Anthony Richardson, these OCs are completely ignoring the skill set of their quarterback because they feel like they can make it work. This is hurting the quarterback. This is hurting the offensive line. We've seen offensive line get blamed for the inefficiencies of their quarterback when the quarterback isn't doing a good job of being able to call out the coverages, read the coverages. We're seeing it. We're seeing it with the wide receivers getting frustrated because I can't get the ball when I'm wide open, when I just beat this coverage. I knew what the coverage was. I just beat it, but I'm not getting the ball. And so now you got teams having a punt on a 30 instead of being able to say first down because of a 40-yard bomb. we're seeing it constantly and constantly again because general managers, and this ain't got nothing to do with Nick Casario, and so for a guy that gave him a lot of smoke, I was wrong. We're seeing it from these arrogant coaches. They feel like they can win all the way up to the team the Vikings just beat. Brock Purdy, I give him a lot more credit and respect than I did before because I've seen him make some plays. But in Kyle Shanahan's system, and I think eventually, depending on changes that could be made by Bobby Slowick, we'll start looking at it the same, but you're going to reach a ceiling with Brock Purdy that I think when I look around the rest of the NFL, there is one young quarterback that I don't feel like will have that problem, and that's CJ Stroud, because he is more so of that traditional quarterback that understands how to operate in the pocket, has amazing arm talent, may not be all arm strength, but the touch specifically on these sideline throws to get the ball just right over the defender to drop right in the receiver's hands is phenomenal to see. And we've seen CJ Stroud be a productive quarterback when we've all had question marks about the play calling and play design going back to last year. We've seen questionable moments from Bobby Slowick when, hey, man, listen, you're trying to run the ball right now, and it's just not happening. Last week, CJ just went out there and won you a game. Do it again. And when the ball was finally put in CJ's hand, we've seen magic happen. He is the exception to the issue the NFL has right now. And that's a lot of these guys coming into the league raw, not ready to start, but because of their draft status and position, they're forced to start. And then now we're looking at the quarterback getting sabotaged, the general manager getting sabotaged, the franchise getting sabotaged. Again, the offensive line is getting sabotaged because they're going to take a bulk of the blame on you got to block longer for them. Hey, man, this is the NFL. You got 2.5, maybe three. You may have 2.5. But your job as a quarterback is to be able to mentally win games just as important, just as much as you're supposed to physically win games. And when I look around the NFL, I don't see many young quarterbacks being able to do that. Justin Herbert in LA, he's one of those quarterbacks that I can see. We're no longer going to talk about Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, who I think has his inefficiencies in his game as a quarterback. Joe Burrow, we're no longer considering him. Josh Allen, they're no longer young quarterbacks. And honestly, Justin Herbert is no longer a young quarterback either. So if we look at the last couple of seasons, hey, man, you guys are doing a lot of disservices to these quarterbacks because you believe your system is impenetrable, bulletproof. And luckily, CJ doesn't fall in that class because he's that special of a quarterback. Mentally, he can win the game. Mentally, he can win the game just as much as physically. And now, as I transition over to the other side, I think Sam Darnold was a part of that group of quarterbacks that didn't get the help that they needed from the sidelines. Had those stubborn coaches that put a quarterback in the box, but now in Minnesota, under Kevin O'Connell, who I love as a head coach, under Wes Phillips, with Justin Jefferson, now you have a Sam Darnold going on almost 10 years. I think this is year 8 for him, finally able to have some light at the end of the tunnel. So we'll talk about keys to victory against the Minnesota Vikings on the other side of the Locked On Texans podcast, this special edition. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on maybe a Mahomes rookie card or a CJ Stroud rookie card just isn't in the cards. I love collecting cards. I used to love them really a lot when I was young and had the Charles Barkley rookie card, had it all. But thanks now to the slab packs from the arenaclub.com, I don't got to drop serious money. You don't got to drop serious money to collect cards. Now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was from last week's Arena Club pack. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value and a complete view of all possible cards and clear hit rates for each one. So whether you want to get the rookie Mahomes, whether the CJ Stroud rookie, maybe you want to get the Nico Collins rookie, who may be the number one receiver in the league, maybe you want to get his rookie card. You can do that at arenaclub.com. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pools are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping. Whether you're buying, selling, or trading or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl and using code lockedonnfl. That's arenaclub.com/lockedon and using code lockedonnfl for 10% off your first purchase. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. I'm not going to hold you guys too much longer. Just wanted to talk about how the Houston Texans can bring Sam Darnold back to reality. Sam Darnold has been a pleasant surprise, not only for the Minnesota Vikings, but for the league. Kind of reminds me of Geno Smith's resurgence a couple of years ago. So far, Sam Darnold has thrown for 4 TDs, 2 interceptions, has a completion percentage of 71. And between head coach Kevin O'Connell and offensive coordinator Wes Phillips, Darnold has had a 2-week resurgence to his career. And with the Texans taking on the Minnesota Vikings this Sunday, 2 good 2-0 teams. There's a few storylines. Again, both teams 2-0 taking on each other. John Grenard, Blake Cashman get an opportunity to play their old teams. 2 former Texans players. The LSU battle, Jettas versus Sting. Kamari Lassiter versus Addison is also a good battle to look at, good storyline to look at. But the storyline after the game should be centered around how this Texans defense stopped a red-hot offense and how this Texans offense got back on track. And that's plain and simple, guys. That's plain and simple. Of course, you're going to need a big game from your corners. If I want to talk about how to stop this offense, you're going to need a big game from your corners. And let me just say this. We saw Derek Stingley travel with Amari Cooper in the playoffs. It needs to happen again. Justin Jefferson is on track to play Sunday. He is the, if not 1A receiver in the NFL. And I think another storyline to add to this is if Nico Collins has another dominant performance, the top 7 talk no longer exists. Shout out to Barrett the Bully. He's top 5. Right now, he's top 5. If he has another dominant day, right? Has to be. But I think aside from the one-on-one matchups on the outside at the corners, I think this game is where the Texans don't blitz at an over 40% rate. Wes Phillips has been, I think, a phenomenal play caller, dialing up plays to help Sam Darnold beat teams' blitz. The Texans blitz and played man coverage on 73% of the Bears' third down dropbacks on Sunday, per Next Gen Stats. Look at how many of those resulted in sacks. I don't think this is the game. It should be the game plan for the Houston Texans throughout 4 quarters Sunday. I think you have to respect the Minnesota Vikings offensive line, who has some damn good tackles, way more than you respect the Bears offensive line and the talent that they have on the offensive side of the ball. Also considering Sam Darnold has been perfect against the blitz this year, throwing for 270 yards, 3 TDs, also going 8 for 8. While going into the Bears game, the young quarterback Caleb Williams, he struggled out of the gate against the blitz like young quarterbacks do. And so it made sense for Houston to go after Caleb Williams to get pressure on him. Also considering his dual threat ability or his play outside of the pocket, which he's known to do. I'm not saying Houston should completely do away with the blitzing as much as they did, which is probably the highest they've blitzed under DeMeco Ryans in a regular season game. But I am saying Houston will need to rely on their guys up front, their front 4 rush to get after Sam Darnold like they have traditionally in the past under DeMeco Ryans and force him to go through progressions by taking away the quick hot reads or the blitz beaters. I think that's how you beat Sam Darnold in this offense. You got the corners outside to do so. Now, I think the more intriguing matchup, and I think it'll be kind of a great test for Kamari, will be Kamari versus Addison, because I don't think Stingley should leave Justin Jefferson. Those two have history. Those two know each other. And so I think that's going to be a phenomenal battle. That'll be one of those when we look back at the end of the year, if he's healthy, if he's on an all-pro run, well, he held DJ Moore to 54 yards and an interception. What did he do the next week against Justin Jefferson? What did he do against Jettas? That'd be a great conversation to have. Honestly, taking away those hot read blitz beaters and forcing Sam Darnold to go left to right to scan the field, to figure out who's open. And then you have Danielle Hunter, you have Will Anderson, you have Mario Edwards, who between Danielle Hunter and Mario Edwards, those guys are creating pressure with under 2.5 seconds. So they can get after Sam Darnold. This will probably be their best offensive line that they've played from a tackle standpoint. But on the inside, I trust Mario and Foley. And I trust DeMeco Ryans to not have to lean and rely on his blitz, but they're going to dial up some stunts and get in the face of Sam Darnold. Hopefully, he'll be seeing ghosts again. The ghost of DJ Screw. Hopefully. Now, for the Texans to get the ball rolling on offense against a team, you got to know you're going up against a team on the defensive side of the ball that's coached by the Tua hater himself, Brian Flores. You got to know he's a guy that likes to blitz a lot. And his team has run a lot of cover two. They run cover two at the third highest rate in the NFL. And, oh, yeah, they're coming off a game where they had 5 sacks defensively. So, Bobby Sloyd, we had question marks throughout this entire week after Sunday night's performance. 19 points was the storyline. People are concerned, right? Bobby Sloyd, the man with the weapons, use them. And use them accordingly to the pressure and coverages you're going against. Now, I do think this is where we'll see the growth from CJ Stroud. We'll see the growth from CJ Stroud because this will probably be one of the better coverages, disguises, pressure defenses, play calling. This will probably be one of the better that he's going to go up against this year. But I think in order to beat the cover two, and in order to beat some of these blitzes that I expect, some of these delayed blitzes I expect Brian Flores to have to throw at the Houston Texans, I think we should see a lot of high-low concepts, but I'd be shocked if we didn't see a game plan to emphasize using Dalton Schultz more than what we've seen to this point. So for the Houston Texans, you got to call the Minnesota Vikings and tell them, hey, call your tailor to prepare your seams, because that's where Dalton Schultz should live on Sunday. Beat that cover two. Hey, Dalton, do what you do best. Do what you do best. And also, again, beating cover two, Nico, you know 12 out here. You know 12 out here. And, hey, Bobby, the Vikings only allow 3.8 yards per carry. Getting Juice back will help because Houston can run the ball well and not necessarily a lot. But if they run the ball well for a good 5.5 yards per pop, then that can lead to Houston being able to exploit the Vikings with their play action opportunities, getting some of those corners to bite on a fake or two, and then maybe, hey, again, Nico, Tank Dell undercovering. Stephon Diggs been able to run under some of those cornerbacks and linebackers and safeties and pick up, some first downs. So we know you like to run the game. You don't need to run the ball for 31 times, which is the Houston Texans average so far. You don't need to do that. Houston was successful against the Colts because their front seven, I don't think, as of right now through 2 weeks, is better than the front seven of the Minnesota Vikings. And you got Blake Cashman, who's been balling, knows this team, knows CJ Stroud, knows some of his tendencies. So, yeah, you got to schematically win from the sidelines. And I think it's possible. I think we'll see it. Honestly. And this will be the first time I think we'll see the improvement from CJ Stroud because, again, Brian Flores will mix and disguise coverages from pre to post snap. That's what he does. And again, with the amount of cover 2 Minnesota runs, I think at the end of this game, we should expect Nico Collins to have another big game. I'm not going to say 100 yards, but he should have a big game. He should definitely have a big game. And the conversation at the end of this game is, okay, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Nico Collins for this current year. I think that'll be a conversation that should be had. If he dominates like he's been dominating. So who's currently the number 1 wide receiver? We'll see after Sunday. And I also want to see Tank Dell utilized in the passing game and not just as a gadget player. He's a guy that's truly special, and you cannot limit his special ability. So do they have a corner that can hold Tank Dell? God forbid if they put Stephon Gilmore on him. I think that's a matchup that should result in favor of the Houston Texans. Make sure y'all continue to watch the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Just want to stop by and do this special podcast for you guys. I want to let you guys know that today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel right now through September 22nd. So you only got a couple of days left. But right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your Texans football analyst, John from Sports Guy Hickman. Peace.